So this is a video actually that's a little bit more focused on therapists, but I hope it helps survivors too, so we can listen to. So in case you aren't a therapist, let me just sort of orient you. Sort of a first day of therapist school, therapy 101 thing that we learn is that we're not supposed to give our patients, clients, advice. We're not your friend. We're your therapist. There's money exchanging hands. And our goal is to work with you to not only alleviate distress and suffering and create safety, but also to give you tools to build your capacity, to foster authenticity, to cope with stress. Depends on the therapist, but we want you to do it. Therapy, when it's done right, and frankly, I believe ethically, does not foster dependency between the client and the therapist, but rather, we are trying to help you fly on your own, foster your autonomy, your independence, your trust in yourself, and to provide you with tools and teach you how to use them. And then leave you to decide how you will use them now that you know how, and then you might use therapy less or end up not be needing therapy anymore. And as part of that, we don't give advice. We may shine a bright spotlight on stuff, but we want you to get there yourselves, right? Some people get frustrated when they come to therapy thinking they're going to get a prescription for how to fix their lives. That's actually not how therapy works. I'm just giving you that. Now, I'm going to be very honest here, and I can only speak for myself, so I cannot speak for all therapists. But I have no doubt that some other therapists who are watching this, you certainly are welcome to weigh in the comment section. I can say this for myself. Therapists are human. And all things being equal, a human, good, ethical therapist, we want good things for our client, right? And our most basic commitment, the oath we give, is that we do no harm. And above that, we facilitate your growth. So you better believe that there are outcomes I, as a therapist, desperately want for anyone I talk to. Personally, I know I've had decades to hone a poker face. So when a client's talking to me, I'm thinking, please leave him. Please leave him. You're so much better than this. He is never going to change and he's never going to stop cheating on you. And I can see how smart you are and you'll be fine. But as I'm thinking that, I just have to stay calm and ask things like, what are you seeing as safe options? How are you feeling? What are you hoping for? But inside I'm like, please go, right? Folks, we're rooting for you. But I'm not your best friend who's screaming, break up with him. I do that with my friends. But whatever you decide about whatever you are managing, as good therapists, we are supports and a gentle guide. But we don't get to have an agenda for you. That agenda has to stay under that poker face. We are also not forensic accountants. We are not divorce attorneys. I mean, maybe you have a therapist who's also an attorney, but that's not commonplace. We can't give you pointed legal advice. If we aren't licensed medical practitioners like an MD or a physician assistant or a registered nurse, we can't even give you any kind of pointed medication advice, right? Competency and ethics means we stay in our lane. And when we are working with clients experiencing narcissistic relationships, all of these issues can come up strongly, especially if your therapist is also a survivor, and many of us are. There's a part of us that does want to fix it. We want to give you the answers. We want to give you the solutions, but that's not our job. Our job is to support, validate, create a safe space for you, create a space for your true self to emerge. And yes, we are tempted. I certainly am tempted all the time to tell you, stop talking to your father, leave your partner. Yes, she is cheating on you. And that friend is going to keep taking advantage of you. So no, do not take a girls' trip with her. But I don't. Poker face. I hold the space. And even if you make a choice that doesn't turn out great for you, good therapy, we focus on what that process was for you. We focus on the courage it took to make whatever choice you did and let you know that you will recover. Now, many times, survivors of narcissistic relationships will come to therapy and say to the therapist, will you just tell me what to do? Tell me the steps. I will do them exactly. What do I say? How do I do this? We aren't Cyrano de Bergerac. We can't whisper the answers to you. But it highlights the key issue that so many survivors feel, that I know, and it's helplessness. The big issue is, will you please tell me the right thing to say so my partner doesn't rage at me or doesn't think I'm crazy, and then also tell me how to say it so they will listen to me. You're asking me that because it's impossible, right? It's an impossible ask. Now, certainly, I can work with a client on things like tone and timing and realistic expectations, but at the end of the day, we can only work on your side of communication. We can't control the narcissistic person's reactivity, rage, gaslighting. And since there's so much unpredictability in these relationships, sometimes the narcissistic person does respond in a normal, composed, and healthy manner. And sometimes they respond with unmitigated rage, and sometimes they gaslight. All we can do in therapy is help you cope internally with these reactions and understand your reactions and have self-compassion for yourself and to chip away the self-blame cycle. This idea that there is some perfect thing you can say or some ideal way you can say it and that the therapist knows it, probably not. We can definitely role play with you in therapy and let you try some things and help you tweak it. But we don't have a narcissism decoder ring or book of spells that will make the narcissistic person that much more manageable. We can, again, at best, sometimes all we can do is prepare you for what's about to come. I remember many years ago, I was working with a client who was always trying to balance the three poles of her marriage to a narcissistic person. Her partner's overt, angry, yelling rage, her partner's passive-aggressive, silent treatment rage, and then her partner's gaslighting. His narrative about her was that she was crazy and paranoid and sensitive, and he was tired that she was a quivering nerve and overly anxious, right? She was a very, very smart woman. I'm sure she still is. And in this relationship, she sometimes made decisions that she regretted about home, about finances. She was in an untenable situation where if she asked him about a decision she wanted to make, he would either yell at her or give her the silent treatment, something that would also destabilize their children when he did that. And though she intuitively knew the right answer, she was very cautious. And her cautiousness, which got worse over time because she was getting anxious in this relationship, often meant that he labeled her as crazy and obsessive. And she didn't like that characterization because it wasn't true. So then she would sometimes make a decision, and she recognized she made the decision to avoid him calling her crazy. But she couldn't talk with him about the decision ahead of time, or he would rage or give her the silent treatment. So this client would come into therapy and say, tell me what to do. Tell me what to say. I am making actually some really bad, expensive decisions because of all of my fears, and I'm trying to keep our home stable. But some of these decisions I'm making are bad for the kids. But I don't want him to call me crazy because it's not true. That's understandable. Radical acceptance is tough in these cases. The ultimate answer, really, is that she is married, maybe she still is, married to a manipulative, rageful, dysregulated, gaslighting baby man. And nothing she's tried, couples therapy, setting so-called boundaries, waiting till the exact right time of day to ask for things, or making it so he never had to deal with the small headaches of life so he wouldn't be tantrumy, nothing worked. But she also didn't want to deal with family court and leave, and she knew he would go bonkers in that family court system, and she didn't want the kids to spend half the time with him without her around. So when a client still believes there's a way to ask the narcissistic person something and it go well, there's still hope. It's those tiny threads of the trauma bond still sticking around, the little bits of hope that muddy the well of radical acceptance. That there's got to be a way to say this, to ask this. She believed that maybe it was her that couldn't say it right, rather than it was him whose behavior most of the time was unacceptable, and clearly after so many years of him being that way, unchangeable. When we work with clients experiencing this, we have to focus on what they can control, namely their expectations, and not on the idea that there is some magical way to turn the narcissistic person into someone they want or behaves normally, or for a brief moment can go back to being the person they were during the love bombed or other idealized phase of the relationship. When, for whatever reason it is, that this is your parent or your family or your spouse or your best friend since childhood, that you don't want the relationship to go away, and I understand that, or you maintain some hope that there's something you can do, that is understandable again. And the more you want a relationship, the more you're going to heap the blame onto yourself. You're going to believe that there's got to be a way to say this. And that helplessness of I don't know what to do can bleed into therapy with the ask of what do I say? What do I do? How do I say it? And I'm going to be honest with you folks, sometimes that can leave the therapist feeling helpless too, because there are limits here, especially in cases where everything has been tried and nothing has worked. Then, or sometimes even gets worse. Then the work for us becomes about guiding our clients through the grief, the despair, the loss, the injustice of it all, the almost childlike hope that somehow it could be different. Yeah, life could be different, yep, but this relationship cannot. And that is a really tough thing to take in and sit with. Therapists are not magicians. And there is no magic pill when it comes to narcissistic relationships. And the fact is, this is a new area of exploration. We're still building this airplane in the sky. And we're in the earliest phases of even formally recognizing what these relationships do to people. 25 years ago, we didn't even talk about this stuff. And folks who have been in these relationships for really long periods of time suffered silently for a long time, fully believing it was their fault, and the world let them believe that. I guess we've made some progress. But the two-sided helplessness of the client and sometimes even the therapist can be tough. It can make us as therapists actually feel like we're ineffective, make us want to fix it, come up with some magical 5-step plan. But that's not a thing. The goal of therapy is to help you fill a toolbox so you can build the house. Therapy is that soft place to land when it feels hard or challenging. But then when it's done, you could admire the house you built with those tools and know it's yours. Radical acceptance, realistic expectations, managing the grief, understanding betrayal trauma and how your body and psyche hold it, being validated, having healthy voices in your life. That's the plan, folks. And it's different for everyone. But as therapists, I can tell you this, we are rooting for you. And yes, in many of cases for therapists, in our heads, we know what we want for you. But it's not our place to make that your agenda. It's our place as therapists to be there as you get to a place that feels authentic and real to you and see that. Listen, you've been living what other people want for you for too long. Therapy is a place to figure out what you want that to be and do it. So yeah, sometimes when you say, just tell me what to say, I get you. I hear you. First of all, there's probably nothing you can say, the helplessness, and we're going to give you the tools. So when you're in the heat of it, you got a better shot at either coming up with the thing to say that feels right to you and then managing the fallout. That's always going to happen. Thanks again.